I'm Sheriff Sheridan Cole, and believe me, I've seen it all. 20 years on the force, a career etched with the grit of clearing drug houses, the chaos of breaking up bar fights at 2 in the morning, and the sting of every slur imaginable hurled my way. When I finally bought my modest 3-bed in Brookhaven Estates, it wasn't about climbing some social ladder or chasing a dream home. It was about sheer, bone-deep exhaustion. I was tired, truly tired. Tired of the incessant wail of sirens that were once my soundtrack. Tired of the suffocating weight of a bulletproof vest. Tired of the constant vigilance, always looking over my shoulder, even off duty. All I craved was a sliver of peace. A quiet corner where I could simply water my hydrangeas without a thought in the world beyond their vibrant blooms. Instead, what did I get? My HOA president, a man I'd soon come to know as Clifford Branson, decided my personal quest for tranquility was his personal mission to disrupt. He measured my mailbox with a ruler, for heaven's sake, wrote me up for a welcome Matty deemed faded. And then, on the night my patience finally snapped like an old rubber band, he sent 2 county deputies to my porch. Their crime? My tire, the very one that had carried me through countless emergencies, had dared to touch a single, solitary blade of grass on my own lawn. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. What that genius, Clifford, didn't know, couldn't possibly fathom, was this. Every single deputy in this county, those 2 included, answers directly to me. And they were about to learn that the hard way. I signed the papers for my new home on a Thursday, a muggy, humid Florida Thursday, where the air hung heavy and thick like a wet blanket. The listing agent, a woman whose smile seemed permanently affixed, had gushed about the place, calling it Florida's best-kept secret. She painted a picture of a serene loop of 2-story stucco homes, all uniform and pristine, centered around perfect cul-de-sacs, and many boasting idyllic duck pond views. My mom, bless her heart, had seen the online photos and declared it looked exactly like a Hallmark movie set. And honestly, I figured that meant I wouldn't have to worry about getting shot while taking out the trash. That kind of low-stakes expectation felt like a luxury after my career. My first week in Brookhaven Estates was a blur of unpacking. 17 boxes, each one a relic of my old life, found their new place. I hung my sheriff's commendation plaque, a gleaming testament to years of service, but I faced it towards the wall. No need to brag, no need to invite questions. Just a quiet nod to a past I was trying to leave behind, at least for a little while. I even made the effort to introduce myself to the lady next door, a petite woman with perfectly coiffed hair. She offered a tight smile, asked if I was renting, and then, the moment I said, "Nope, I own," her smile vanished, and she simply walked away. It struck me as odd, a little cold. Looking back, that should have been my first clue. The creaking sound of the welcome wagon's square wheels rolling towards me. I'd expected a wave, a casserole, maybe even a simple, genuine hello. What I got was a chilly shoulder, a precursor to the frosty reception that awaited. It was a subtle shift in the air, a whisper of something not quite right beneath the manicured lawns and pastel facades. Day 9, the letters started arriving. Not friendly notes, not invitations to a neighborhood potluck, but official-looking cream envelopes, embossed with the HOA letterhead, the text meticulously typed in a perfect, unassuming font size 11. The first one, violation notice number 001, hit my mailbox like a tiny, bureaucratic missile. It stated, "Mailbox numbers must be a minimum of 2 inches tall. Yours appear to be 1.8 inches. I remember staring at it, then grabbing a tape measure from my toolbox. I walked out to my mailbox, squinted at the numbers, and measured them precisely. 2 inches. On the nose. I actually laughed out loud, a short, disbelieving bark of a laugh. This was it. This was the big problem in Florida's best-kept secret. I slid the paper into a kitchen drawer, a silly memento of suburban absurdity. 48 hours later, another cream envelope. Violation number 002. Welcome mat faded beyond recognition. My welcome mat, bless its beige, unassuming heart, had been beige when I bought it. It looked exactly the same to me now as it did the day I laid it down. I sighed, rolled my eyes, and drove to the hardware store. I bought a plain, dark brown mat, something utterly inoffensive, and swapped it out. There, I thought, placing it carefully. That's the end of that. Oh, how delightfully naive I was. Spoiler alert, as they say in the movies, it wasn't the end. It was barely the beginning. The petty grievances were just warming up, like a slow simmer before a full boil. Clifford Branson, the man who held the esteemed title of HOA president, lived just 4 houses down from me. He was a retired pharmaceutical representative, and you could tell. He had that air of someone who'd spent his career selling something, always a little too polished, a little too eager to enforce his own brand of order. His wardrobe consisted primarily of golf shirts and every pastel shade known to man, each one crisp and unwrinkled. His attention span, I quickly learned, was perfectly suited for a TikTok video. Short, sharp, and focused entirely on the surface. He began his evening strolls with the precision of a military patrol. Phone in hand, he'd march past my house, snapping pictures with an almost predatory glee. My garbage can placement, a fraction of an inch too far from the curb. My sprinkler overspray, a single drop daring to land on the sidewalk. Even the hairline crack in my driveway, no wider than a credit card, became fodder for his photographic evidence. Each perfectly framed shot, each pixelated imperfection, was meticulously documented and swiftly transformed into yet another violation notice. The sheer volume of these notices, coupled with their increasing absurdity, finally prompted me to dive into the HOA bylaws. 98 pages of single-spaced, mind-numbing boredom, a bureaucratic masterpiece designed to induce sleep. But I read every word, and what I discovered was infuriating. Half the infractions Clifford was citing weren't even listed in the covenants. They were figments of his own overzealous imagination, rules he'd conjured from the ether. My first instinct, the one honed by 20 years of police work, was to confront him, to lay down the law. But then the training kicked in. De-escalation, that's lesson 1 in the academy. Don't inflame the situation. Don't give them the fight they're looking for. Lesson 2, document everything. So, I started a new folder on my computer, labeling it Petty Palace. I printed every violation notice, every email, every photo Clifford had sent. By week 4, that digital folder was thicker, more substantial than my tax return. It was a monument to the ridiculous, a growing testament to one man's obsession. One morning, just as the sun was painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I was sipping my coffee, barefoot on my back porch, enjoying the quiet before the day truly began. That's when Clifford strutted up my driveway, his shadow stretching long and thin before him. "Sheridan," he called out, his voice dripping with an artificial sweetness that grated on my ears, a tone my mama might use if she were about to scold me for leaving my shoes in the living room. "Your back porch lights were on past 11 last night. That's light pollution, you know." I bit back the retort that sprang to my lips. Instead, I offered a practiced, polite apology, promising to buy a timer. He leaned in conspiratorially, lowering his voice as if sharing a profound secret. "People here," he said, his eyes scanning my face with an unsettling intensity. "They really value uniformity. You sure you're a good fit?" The translation was immediate, crystal clear, and chillingly familiar. "Your black single, and your badge, the one that commands respect and authority, is hidden away in a drawer." He wasn't talking about my porch light. He was talking about me, about my presence in his perfectly uniform, perfectly white, perfectly controlled world. I smiled then, a tight professional smile, the kind I perfected over years of dealing with belligerent drunks who thought charm could somehow beat a breathalyzer. It was a smile that said, "I see you. I know exactly what you're doing." And then, without another word, I shut the door. Inside, the carefully constructed calm I'd sought in Brookhaven Estates shattered. My pulse thumped against my eardrums, a frantic rhythm louder than any jailhouse riot I'd ever witnessed. The anger was a hot, bitter taste in my mouth, a potent reminder that even in my own home, I couldn't escape the insidious creep of prejudice. Things escalated fast after that. like gasoline on a grill fast. My garbage truck, a beacon of Tuesday morning routine, arrives precisely at 7. One Tuesday, I had my curbside at 6:55 a.m., a full 5 minutes before the official collection time. By 7:05, a crisp, official-looking notice was tucked under my front door, a $200 fine for early placement of my refuse container. I scoffed. $200 for 5 minutes? The sheer audacity. The infuriating part? That very same morning, Clifford's buddy, who lived 3 doors down, had rolled his can out at 6:30. No ticket. No notice. Nothing. The pattern was becoming undeniable, a stark outline against the carefully painted backdrop of community standards. My professional instincts, sharp and unyielding, kicked in. I drove to the county office, my mind already formulating the necessary queries. I pulled every single fine issued in Brookhaven Estates for the past 6 months. What I found was both shocking and entirely predictable. I topped the leaderboard, not by a little, but by triple the number of violations of the runner-up. Every single fine, every single petty grievance was directed at me. Pattern established. Discrimination detected. It was as clear as day, a textbook case. I didn't hesitate. I forwarded the entire spreadsheet, meticulously compiled, to my civil rights attorney. "Hold on to this," I told her, my voice calm, controlled. "I don't want to play my ace just yet." Part of me, the part that still yearned for that elusive peace, hoped against hope that Clifford would simply back off, find a new hobby, maybe pickleball, or even crocheting. Anything to redirect his obsessive energy away from my life. That fragile hope, however, died a quiet, ignominious death on a humid Saturday night. I'd spent the day out at the range, helping a new crop of recruits qualify. The smell of gunpowder clinging to my uniform. I got home around 9, bone-weary, kicked off my boots, and collapsed onto the couch, ready to simply exist for a few hours. Then, my driveway camera pinged. 2 shadowy figures in ball caps, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of their phone screens. They weren't admiring my landscaping. They were meticulously recording my Tahoe's front tires, which, by some heinous crime against suburban order, were kissing the very edge of my lawn. 30 minutes later, my doorbell camera captured Clifford himself, arms folded across his chest, a smirk wider than a Florida sinkhole plastered across his face. He pointed triumphantly at my license plate, mouthing the word expired. It wasn't. My tag was perfectly current. He savored the moment, then turned and walked away, a silent promise of impending trouble hanging in the humid night air. At precisely 10:30, the serenity of my living room was shattered by a harsh, pulsating red and blue light painting streaks across my walls. My heart sank. 2 deputies, young and unfamiliar, stepped onto my porch. I opened the door, still wearing my faded Property of Sheriff's Department t-shirt, a relic from a training exercise. Deputy 1, clearly the senior of the 2, asked, with a hint of uncertainty in his voice, "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Deputy 2, meanwhile, was scanning my windows like a burglar on a reconnaissance mission. I didn't say a word. I simply reached into my pocket, pulled out my official sheriff's ID, and held it out. Their eyes widened. Their jaws dropped a good inch. "Sheriff Cole," Deputy 1 stammered, his face visibly paling. I just nodded. Over his shoulder, the crackle of the radio confirmed their dawning realization. Code 4, disregard. The situation was immediately, irrevocably defused. Outside, Clifford, who had been lingering at the curb, watching his grand plan unfold, saw his victory wilt into utter confusion, then outright panic. The smug satisfaction drained from his face, replaced by a dawning horror. They explained the situation, their voices now hushed and respectful. Dispatch had received an anonymous, suspicious activity call. Unknown female, possibly trespassing, vehicle blocking sidewalk. I invited them inside, the scent of stale coffee still lingering in the air, a stark contrast to the unfolding drama. My dog, bless her oblivious heart, wagged her tail in happy approval, mistaking the official visit for a friendly social call. We sat at my kitchen table, and I pulled up the camera footage on my laptop. It was crystal clear, with audio to match. Clifford directing them to my door, his voice thick with self-importance, bragging that I'd finally get what's coming to me. Deputy 1's face turned crimson, a deep, mortified red. "Sheriff," he began, his voice barely a whisper. Do you want to press charges for misuse of 911? I knew the law inside and out. Florida statute makes the first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to a year in county jail. I paused, my gaze drifting toward the window, towards my hydrangeas, towards the quiet life I had so desperately sought. I thought about my badge, the weight it still carried, even here, on my own porch. Justice, yes. Vengeance, not so much. Let's give him one last chance, I said, my voice calm and steady. To implode on his own. They left a few minutes later, nodding like altar boys dismissed from service, their respect palpable. Outside, Clifford, still reeling, tried to make small talk with them. They rolled past him without a single word, leaving him standing alone in the quiet, humid night, a solitary figure, consumed by the consequences of his own petty malice. The next HOA meeting rolled around, and the air was thick with anticipation. Normally, you'd be lucky to get 6 people to show up, mostly the same few retirees who enjoyed the free coffee and stale cookies. This time, all 38 chairs were filled, and there were people standing along the back wall. Word, it seemed, spread faster than wildfire in dry palmetto. I arrived straight from work, deliberate choice. Full uniform.
Campaign cover perfectly angled. Nameplate polished to a mirror sheen. The moment I stepped through the door, the low hum of conversation stopped dead, like someone had hit the pause button on the entire room. Every eye was on me. Clifford, ever the showman, opened the meeting with a perfunctory pledge of allegiance, then launched into a pompous monologue about cracking down on rule breakers and maintaining community standards. He puffed out his chest, completely oblivious to the palpable shift in the room's energy. I simply raised my hand, a calm, deliberate gesture. "Point of information, Mr. President," I stated, my voice cutting through his bluster with quiet authority. "How many violations have you personally issued this quarter?" He fumbled with his papers, his bravado visibly deflating, and mumbled something about 12. I didn't miss a beat. I clicked my remote, and a projector whirred to life, displaying a meticulously organized PowerPoint presentation on the wall behind him. The real number flashed across the screen. 41. And the kicker. All but 3 were aimed squarely at my address. Gasps echoed through the room. Then I played the audio from my doorbell camera. Clifford's voice, clear as a bell, coaching the deputies, bragging about my impending downfall. Faces in the audience reddened with a mixture of embarrassment and indignation. One homeowner, a sweet retiree who had actually brought me brownies when I moved in, stood up, her voice trembling slightly. "Clifford," she said, her tone laced with disappointment, "that's harassment. Pure and simple." Another resident, a man who rarely spoke above a whisper, added, "We elected you to maintain property values, not to run a petty dictatorship." I let the murmur grow, the collective outrage building before I spoke again, my voice firm, clear, and unwavering. "I enforce Florida law for a living," I said, looking around the room, making eye contact with as many people as I could. "Your covenants, as much as you might wish otherwise, do not supersede it. Continued targeting, especially based on what we've just witnessed, constitutes official misconduct and discrimination under the Fair Housing Act. I am prepared, Mr. President, to refer this matter to the State Attorney's Office." The silence that followed was thicker than summer asphalt, heavy with the weight of my words and the sudden, stark realization of the gravity of the situation. Clifford, his face a sickly shade of green, surrendered the gavel to the Vice President, muttering something about miscommunication and promising a thorough audit. It was a pathetic, last-ditch attempt to save face. I didn't give him the chance. I calmly slid a neatly typed settlement agreement across the fold-up table. My terms were clear, concise, and non-negotiable. Rescind all my fines, expunge them from county records, Implement a standardized violation schedule reviewed by an outside, impartial attorney, and mandatory fair housing training for every single board member, effective immediately. The vote was unanimous. Every hand shot up, a collective rebuke of Clifford's reign. He abstained, of course, arms crossed like a grounded teenager. His defeat absolute. The meeting was adjourned, and he walked out alone, a solitary shrunken figure, past neighbors who had once waved and smiled, now averting their gaze. Outside, lightning bugs blinked in the humid night, tiny, ephemeral lights against the encroaching darkness. I felt lighter than Kevlar off my shoulders, a profound sense of relief washing over me. I drove home, windows down, the warm night air rushing in, Al Green crooning softly on the radio. That night I slept 9 hours straight, the first time in months. The quiet felt earned, the peace hard-won. The aftermath was swift and satisfying. Clifford Branson resigned to spend more time with family. Translation. He packed his wounded ego and his pastel golf shirts into his golf cart and drove off into the sunset, never to be seen again, at least not in any official capacity. The HOA chastened and reformed, elected a new president, a retired teacher with a kind smile who greeted everyone by their first name and, true to form, baked lemon bars for new move-ins. My fines, those ridiculous paper tigers, vanished from the county database like morning mist, gone without a trace. I even planted fresh sod where my tire had allegedly committed its eco-crimes. Now the grass grows thick and defiantly green, a small symbol of my victory. Neighbors wave again, genuine waves this time. Not the tight-lipped, suspicious kind. I still keep my badge plaque facing the wall. Because peace, I've learned, doesn't come from a piece of metal or a title. It comes from people choosing respect over fear, understanding over judgment. If you've dealt with HOA horror stories or just nosy neighbors, drop a comment below. What's the pettiest complaint you've ever received? Smash that like if you believe respect beats rules every time. And subscribe for more real-life comebacks. Remember, fences matter, but character matters more. I'm Sheriff Sheridan Cole. I moved here for quiet, got chaos, and ended up turning it into a powerful lesson for us all. Brookhaven Estates finally feels like the secret Hallmark movie it promised to be. Minus the commercial breaks. My hydrangeas bloom in vibrant defiance. My mailbox numbers proudly stand 2 inches tall, and my grass? Well, it's never been greener. If this story hits you, like the video and hit the subscribe button as this helps our channel. Thank you and see you in the next video.